So the protests in the evidence, so they've been found guilty of conspiring to cause a public nuisance. So they're kind of being done for planning events that were widely reported at the time, including protesters climbing onto gantries over the motorway for 4 successive days in November 2022. The actual protesters themselves, of course, have already been jailed. 45 activists involved in total, and the economic hit is estimated to be £765,000. The cost of the Metropolitan Police was more than £1.1 million, and the estimated delays, which is quite an interesting conversation given what we just heard from Lowestoft, sort of good delays and bad delays. The Tory government responsible for all sorts of delays as a consequence of its ludicrous Brexit, but Just Stop Oil protesters responsible for an estimated 50,000 hours of vehicle delays, affecting more than 700,000 vehicles. This is the claim. The M25 compromised for more than 120 hours. The problem with the rhetoric of people like Greg Smith MP is that the people who've been jailed are not the types of people to fit the cliches. I don't know how old you are, but I guess it's always tempting to think of Swampy at this point. Swampy was the sort of original eco-activist, or at least the first one to really garner the attention of the British public, because he was attempting to stop road building by digging big tunnels under the targeted area and refusing to come out. In retrospect, that's really brave, especially if you're claustrophobic. But at the time, I mean, I was very much closer to the Daily Mail's position back then than I am now. And at the time, I just thought, lazy, not lazy, but troublemaking do-gooders or whatever the phrase at the time was. I think I used to talk about patchouli oil a lot. Do you know what patchouli oil is? I think I used to talk about patchouli oil a lot when we were talking about eco-activists. But people like Swampy were canaries down the coal mine, and they've now been followed by, a 58-year-old woman, Louise Lancaster, a doctor, a PhD, Lucia Whitaker de Abro, Daniel Shaw's 38, Roger Hallam, the co-founder of Just Stop Oil, a 58-year-old man. These are, and a 22-year-old woman called Cressida Gethin. So the 5 names: Roger Hallam, Cressida Gethin, Daniel Shaw, Lucia Whitaker de Abro, and Louise Lancaster. These are people motivated by a profound concern, an irresistible concern, an unignorable concern about climate change. But, and it's 5 years for Roger Hallam, 4 years for the rest of them. Of course, they'll be out in much less than that. Possibly, if the prisons crisis isn't solved, or at least ameliorated sometime soon, they'll be out after serving about 40% of their sentence. But that's not the point. It's a peaceful protest designed to stop the traffic, literally. Figure of speech, that. And here's the thing, all right? I am persuaded, and it shouldn't sound surprising to anybody, but there are still a lot of idiots out there, of course. I am persuaded that the climate change crisis is existential, absolutely extraordinary. And I'm also very conscious of the curious human reaction, which I touched upon at the beginning of the last hour. We hear about this international IT outage, not an internet outage. God, I can't imagine anyone would have called it that. The international IT outage. I called it that. And that was a mistake, because, of course, you now use the internet to send the fix to everybody who needs to sort their IT out. So it's an international IT outage. I'm conscious of 3 things. I'm conscious of intellectually appreciating the scale of the emergency, but emotionally not doing enough. I'm emotionally not doing enough. This isn't about me, by the way. I'm just getting my ducks in a row before I give you the question that I want you to answer. I'm conscious of the fact that we in the media, whether we are broadly sympathetic to Just Stop Oil's cause or not, and if you're not, you really need to give your head a wobble. You don't need to approve of the tactics. We're getting to that. But you really, really, really need to understand the cause, unless, of course, you've been on your Uncle Keith's Facebook page and you're convinced not only that aeroplanes are seeding the planet with secret chemicals, but also that there's no such thing as climate change, and the World Economic Forum is trying to imprison us all in cells made of spam. I get that. So I'm sympathetic to their cause. And I understand the failure to garner the sort of attention that they feel they need. And it is that failure, in which we're all complicit, that prompts the behaviours for which they have now been sentenced. It is the failure of peaceful protest that does not disrupt that propels them into places of disruption. So stuff I find ridiculous, just for the record, is lobbing orange powder on a snooker table at the Crucible in Sheffield. I know it gets coverage, but it will get less coverage. Attacking Stonehenge. I found that ridiculous at 10 o'clock in the morning. By 11 o'clock, I'd kind of come round a bit because of that dichotomy, because of that tension between action and attention. If you really want to draw attention to your cause, you've got to do something that is attention-grabbing. And standing outside the Department of Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs for the rest of your life with a placard, or going even on hunger strike outside the Department of Environment and Rural Affairs, is not going to work. It is not going to get me or other LBC presenters to talk properly about your cause if you do all of the things that you're allowed to do. So instead, you do the things that you're not allowed to do. And that includes disrupting traffic. That is what they're going to jail for a total of just shy of 21 years in total. As I say, they won't serve that. But humanity is quite easy to argue. Humanity is currently doomed. And these people disrupted traffic. And they're going to jail for 21 years. So I want you to come at it from that tension there. You know it is easy, and there may well be examples of this happening, but generally speaking, it's a rhetorical device deployed by the intellectually lazy and the morally bankrupt. So you say something like, well, what about all the ambulances that couldn't get through? And then you never mention things like that on days like the coronation, when the entire capital city is brought to a complete standstill, or the late Queen's funeral, where the roads near me were absolutely shut, completely shut. So that the cortege could make its way to Windsor. So, there is some validity in it, but it is deeply disingenuous to pretend that you're not comfortable with shutting down huge swathes of the nation's infrastructure for things like, crownings of kings. You need to do something significant to draw the attention that the emergency demands. But there's still a sense, isn't there, among people who... I tell you what I think this story will have done. I think this story will have got some people who aren't massively sympathetic with Just Stop Oil or their tactics, concluding that the sentence is excessive. The sentence is excessive. And equally, I think you'll have people who are supportive of Just Stop Oil, who are supportive of both their tactics and their actions, who recognise that the job of the judiciary here is to stop them from doing it again. It is pour encourager les autres. It is literally designed, this sentencing, to stop the next generation or the next phalanx of Just Stop Oil activists from stopping the traffic, from bringing the M25 to a standstill, or sending people up gantries to stop the, what would you call it, to stop the social and economic blood from being pumped around the body politic. That is what they set out to do. And it worked. And that is why the full weight of the law has come down upon them like a ton of bricks. But it's peaceful. There's events in Harehill, just outside Leeds overnight, that are anything but peaceful. It reminds me, if you haven't seen the footage, of when the police van was set on fire outside an asylum centre by racist protesters. A Romanian, I think a Romanian Christian child, they were trying to take into social service care, and the local community reacted incredibly violently to the point of tipping over a police car. Just a message for anyone who needs to hear this: you condemn both. It doesn't matter what the context is, or the identity or the background of the culprits. If people are attacking police vehicles, they are bang out of order. You don't base your reaction to this on whether or not they're football hooligans or or I don't know, anti-immigration protesters. They're all scumbags, okay? Whether you're attacking a police car in Leeds because their social services are trying to do their job, or whether you're attacking a police car in Kent because immigration services are trying to do their job. You don't tailor, unless you're a massive racist, of course, and there's a lot of that on social media this morning. But you don't base your response to actions upon the ethnicity or what you perceive to be, or what you're being told by racist agitators the religion of the actors may be. 11:15 is the time. I just want to make that clear. But, you know, there will be people involved in those protests who don't go to jail at all. There are people currently not going to jail. There was one case, and I can't find the detail. I really wanted to set it up for you in juxtaposition to this story, of a man who attacked his girlfriend, threatened to kill her, stabbed her, inflicted terrible, grievous harm upon her, and the judge has said in court that the likelihood of a custodial sentence is diminished by the state of the justice system, by the state of our prisons. So they're releasing violent prisoners early to free up room in a prison system that is now going to contain 5 adults who are going to jail for peacefully protesting against the government's failure to properly address climate change. Now, listen, I know how knee-jerk reactions work. I know, oh yeah, it's outrageous. They should be locked up for even longer. I get it, but be kinder to yourself this morning. Just be a little bit kinder to yourself. Allow your imagination to grow into a space that is not defined and very tightly controlled by right-wing rhetoric, by lazy, morally bankrupt right-wing rhetoric. Who do I get to kick today? You've ended up asking yourself every morning. Is it the immigrants? No, we're taking a day off from the immigrants. We're going after the eco-zealots or whatever we could. Just be kinder to yourself. Give yourself enough space in your mind to actually wonder what a country is becoming when they are releasing violent criminals early in order to make room for peaceful protesters. And also, I don't know how much attention you paid yesterday to the COVID inquiry, to the original findings of the COVID inquiry, but you will probably have picked up on the fact that the early findings show that had the government been better prepared, goodness knows how many people might still be alive. So what we have today is a situation where a citizen, an ordinary citizen of these islands, who is trying to prevent unnecessary deaths by planning peaceful climate protests, gets sent to prison for 5 years, whereas a former prime minister who literally caused countless unnecessary deaths by transferring resources from pandemic response to preparation for his own lunatic no-deal Brexit, as things stand, gets no punishment at all. So you go to prison for trying to stop people from dying unnecessarily, but you don't go to prison for hurting people. Or, in the case of politicians responsible for our paltry pre-pandemic preparation, contributing to people's deaths. So what do we think? 0345 6060 973. The tactics, I don't know that they work. I really don't know that people who are a little bit sceptical or ambivalent watch the Just Stop Oil protest and think, yeah, they're right, I'm joining. I don't know. I don't like not knowing. Some days I like not knowing. I like coming on air and admitting to you that I don't know which way to jump. I don't know which way to go. But that's different. That's when there are two directions. I don't know about this story. The job of the government, the job of the judiciary, forgive me, the job of the authorities is to ensure that this stuff doesn't happen. And in order to do that, the sentences need to be really severe. It has to be severe enough to put people off doing the same thing next year. But I don't think that will work. I think it's like breaking a butterfly on a wheel. If you're motivated by existential angst about the future of the species, then you're not going to be put off by 4 years in jail any more than Nelson Mandela was put off the path that he chose to follow by a much longer period of imprisonment. So I don't know. And that's where we go with this question. 0345 6060 973. What do you think of these sentences? What do you think of them? Will it work? Will it work as a deterrent? Or is it actually quite a dark day for our democracy when peaceful protesters can be sent to prison for longer than violent criminals? 0345 6060 973.